Last week, we explored whether you're in a buyer's or seller's market when it comes to real estate, what it really means, and if it even matters. I'll link to last week's video in the cards. It may help to put things into context for this video. This week, I'm taking a more focused approach and sharing tips for buying a house in a seller's market and tips for buying a house in a buyer's market. Your approach to purchasing a home can and should change depending on the current state of the market. So let's talk about what you can do. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back and spending your time with me. My name is Lindsay. I'm a proud Anthem resident and your local realtor with the Wise Move AZ team at Realty One Group. On this channel, we have a lot of fun talking about all things Anthem and real estate every single Thursday, and we absolutely love having you along for the ride. All right. Do you want the good news or the bad news first? Just kidding. As I discussed in last week's video, I don't know that there's a lot of value in the average consumer trying to time the market. It's really about making the most of the current market and playing to the strengths of your position in it. So my plan is to start with my tips for buying in a seller's market because that's usually where we get more questions. But after that, I'm jumping straight into my tips for buying in a buyer's market. Although it may be less asked about, I feel strongly that it's equally important. Tips for buying in a seller's market. As a quick reminder, a seller's market is a market that tends to favor sellers. Prices may be increasing, homes may be selling quicker, there may be fewer homes on the market, and you may be seeing more multiple offer situations. Ouch. Tip number 1, be ready to act quickly. Please don't hear this as me saying, buy the first house you see. No way. Instead, what I want you to consider is getting your finances in order. If you're fortunate enough to be paying cash for a property, ensure that those funds are easily liquidated. If you're like most people, you'll be getting a loan. Get pre-qualified, or better yet, consider getting fully pre-approved for your loan. I am a huge advocate for using a local lender. They'll fully understand the local requirements and they'll be able to deliver what you need when you need it. In Arizona, we're required to provide proof of funds or a pre-qualification letter with your offer. If we have that up front, we won't be frantically trying to get it together when you find a home that you want to make an offer on. Additionally, when I say be ready to act quickly, I also mean that you'll need to monitor the new listings closely. If a home you like hits the market, you may need to be willing to make time to go and see that home that day. If you're house shopping from afar, you may need to rely on your realtor to preview the home for you. If you have questions about what that would look like, you can click and watch this video on virtual house hunting. It's possible that depending on how competitive the market is and your availability to see homes, that you may need to make an offer sight unseen. Anyways, the key here is that hesitating or being unprepared could cause you to miss out on a home. Work with your agent to get as prepared as possible in advance and come up with a plan for springing into action when a home you like hits the market. Tip number 2, learn about the seller. When you find a home that you want to make an offer on, work with your agent to learn as much about the seller as you can. Remember, you could be competing with several other buyers for this house. You want your offer to stand out in all the best possible ways. Of course, offering list price or more is going to appeal to them, but there is so much more to an offer. Is there a closing timeline that works best for them? Could they use a little bit of flexibility from their buyer in one area or another? Would the ability to leave some furniture behind make their lives easier? Is the seller emotionally attached to this house? Most of the time, the answer is yes. If that's the case, consider writing a letter to the seller. Let them know what you love most about their home, maybe share a little bit about your own story, and share your hope of one day calling it home too. Lastly, you want to find out if there are other offers already on the table. If so, you want to learn as much as you can about them so that you can draft your offer accordingly. Their agent may not have the seller's permission to disclose any details of the offers, but it's always worth an ask. Tip number 3, make a strong offer. This is not usually the best time to be hunting for a deal, unfortunately. You should plan to pay a fair price for the home. And you need to be prepared that the price may go above asking. Don't hear that as me saying you need to go in above asking. I'm not. What I'm saying is think about what your best or strongest offer is and consider going in at or close to that. Bring your A game and be proud of the offer you're submitting. If you go in too low, your offer may be leveraged against other possible buyers or even outright ignored. On the other hand, if you go in strong and lose the house, you'll know that you did your best. Tip number 4, have the tough conversations before. This kind of speaks to the first point of being prepared, but I want you to go a little bit further once you've identified a house that you want to make an offer on. Things can move quickly and you can find yourself in a multiple offer or multiple counter offer situation just like that. It's so important that you've had the tough conversations beforehand so that you don't get swept up or feel taken advantage of when the negotiations get hard. The last thing we want is for you to have buyer's remorse because you feel like the sellers won. Answer these questions. What is the highest you'll go on price? What contingencies, if any, are you willing to remove or renegotiate? What are your must-haves versus wants? Know where you're willing to settle. What if the seller refuses to make repairs? What terms of the contract will you entertain pushback from the seller on, and which ones are you firm on? You can talk to your agent about these questions, or you can keep them to yourself. Just do what you can to be prepared. Tip number 5, don't get discouraged. Being a buyer in a seller's market can be so disheartening, especially if you lose out on a house you really wanted. We completely understand. We ride that roller coaster with our clients. If you need to take a break after losing out on a house, take it. If you want to jump right back in and make an offer on another home, do it. This is your journey, and your personal circumstances will dictate the next steps. Do what makes the most sense for you when it makes the most sense for you. Okay, that last one was a little touchy-feely, but that's okay. Now let's talk about buying in a buyer's market. As a quick reminder, a buyer's market is a market that tends to favor buyers. Prices may be decreasing, homes may be selling slower, and there may be more homes on the market. Generally, there are fewer buyers fighting over the same house. It's gotta be all sunshine and roses, right? Not quite, but it definitely is less frantic. Tip number 1, take your time. Shopping for a house is exciting, and you may be tempted to just jump right in and buy the first house that you like. Pump the brakes. In a buyer's market, you may have more flexibility, so my advice is to take your time and really get to know what's out there. Know the inventory and really explore your wants versus needs. It's possible that you may be able to snag a few more of those wants if you're in a buyer's market. Unless, of course, your wants are a 5-car garage, fully renovated pool home in Anthem under $300,000, because same, and it doesn't exist. Anyways, I don't want you to miss out on your dream home, but I also don't want you to be too hasty. Tip number 2, be careful with lowball offers. Don't assume that because you're in a buyer's market, you can just make super lowball offers and meet in the middle. Sellers may be offended by your offer and not be willing to respond. Just because the market isn't in their favor doesn't mean that they're going to be willing to just give away their house. I know, tough times. My best advice is to rely on your agent to run thorough and complete comps on the property you're most interested in making an offer on. You can be a little bit more aggressive with your initial offer, but I still encourage you to be in the realm of fair and reasonable. It's still possible for a home to have a bidding war even in a buyer's market, particularly if it stands out in some way or if it's priced really well. Tip number 3, still get pre-qualified. Okay, are you sick of me harping on your financial situation? Even if you're in a buyer's market, you want to make sure that you have proof of funds, a pre-qualification letter, or a pre-approval in place. The seller still needs to know that you're serious and capable of buying their home. They need to make sure that you're worth taking their home off the market for. Tip number 4, shorten response deadlines. When you're in a buyer's market, you may want to tighten up the time that you give a seller to respond to your offer. In our market, I would say that 24 hours is pretty typical, so you could consider tightening that up to half a day, for example. Now, I want to preface this by saying that your agent needs to confirm that the seller and seller's agent can accommodate a slightly tighter turnaround time. You don't want to make an offer with a short response deadline just to find out that the seller is hiking Machu Picchu until Tuesday without internet access. Just saying. Do your due diligence. Also, if you're submitting an offer at 8 o'clock at night, maybe consider giving them longer than 8 o'clock in the morning to respond. Be reasonable. The key here is that you want to limit the time they have to shop your offer around to other possible buyers who have some level of interest. Get in and get out. Tip number 5, ask for what you want. When you're crafting your offer, think about what you really want. Would a longer closing be helpful for you? Is there a piece of furniture or artwork at the house that you would love to have? Could you use some help with closing costs? Maybe you want to ask for a few more repairs or even a flooring allowance if the carpet was looking a little dingy. Anyways, I'm not suggesting that you go all out here, but if there are a couple of things that would really make you happy, consider asking for them. If the seller hasn't been getting the activity they were hoping for, they may be more willing to negotiate. So there you have it. What do you think? Are you ready to buy with confidence regardless of the status of the market? As I mentioned in our previous video, I bought my first house in a seller's market and it was still a great investment. Next week, we'll be tackling our best tips for selling, so make sure you subscribe and check back in with us next Thursday. If you found this video helpful, let me know by hitting that like button, subscribing to our channel, and leaving me a comment. Also, in case you missed it, you can click up top to watch this video where we break down buyers and sellers markets and whether it really matters, or you can click to watch this video on the bottom where I share a little bit more about the community that I'm so proud to live, work, and play in, Anthem, Arizona. Enjoy those, and I'll see you next Thursday.